The news from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
The news at 6 comes to you with the compliments of Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC. With the news at this time, I'm Dennis Chabrol. Good evening. First, the highlights. The People's National Congress Reform has begun searching for a replacement for Mr. Joseph Harmon, who is expected to resign from Parliament later this month. A driver has been arrested and is under police guard at a hospital in connection with Monday night's deadly accident on the west coast of Demerara. Originally, a Trinidad and Tobago oil sector company says the lives of 4 divers could have been saved. And the Caribbean experts believe that several countries may experience drought. Internationally, we go to the front line in the war between Ukraine and Russia. The details coming up.
After a hard day's work, a lime at the workplace would be great, and even greater and better with KFC, with a wide choice of finger-licking meals in a wide range of sizes. Could be a birthday celebration or promotion, or a lime for no reason at all. Any lime, anytime, anywhere is better and tastier with a delicious meal from any of KFC's 9 locations, including the Amazonia Mall at Providence, open now from 9 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. KFC.
It's finger-licking good.
And now the news in detail. The People's National Congress Reform, PNCR, is expected to pick a prominent former minister to replace Mr. Joseph Harmon. Mr. Harmon has told House Speaker Mansour Nadir that he'll be resigning with effect from March 15 as a parliamentarian for a Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change, APNU-AFC. Chairman of the People's National Congress Reform, Sherwin Holder, declined to say whether Central Executive Member retired Rear Admiral Gary Best or Indigenous rights activist Mervyn Williams will replace Mr. Harmon.
All names, all suitable candidates will be considered. I assure you. I wouldn't get into the specifics. I'm saying to you that all suitable candidates will be considered. Mr. Best is a central executive member. Morvin being a past parliamentarian, but I wouldn't pronounce on that. It's a long list, and in due time we will let you know. We'll do this shortlisting and we'll let you know.
103.1 FM, Demerara Waves Online News was later informed that Mr. Harmon is expected to be replaced by a veteran PNCR member who has much-needed specific skills. The PNCR has been citing the need to use the oil money to increase salaries and pensions while developing Guyana's other sectors to prepare for the country for when there is no oil or gas. Party leader Aubrey Norton has promised to bring his experts to outline the details of its strategy to invest the earnings from oil and gas in Guyana's development. Guyana today submitted to the International Court of Justice in The Hague its memorial on the merits of its case against Venezuela's claim to the Essequibo region. Guyana wants the ICJ to confirm that the 1899 arbitral award of the land boundary between Guyana and Venezuela is the full and final settlement of the border between the 2 neighboring South American nations. The ICJ had in December 2022 confirmed that it has jurisdiction to hear the case. Venezuela says the ICJ does not have the legal right to hear the case and interprets the 1966 Geneva Agreement to mean that a border controversy must be settled through negotiations. Guyana seeks from the court a decision that the arbitral award of 1899 determining the boundary is valid and binding upon Guyana and Venezuela, and that the boundary established by that award at the 1905 agreement demarcating it is the lawful boundary between Guyana and Venezuela. Fed up that the United Nations Secretary General's mediation process had failed to resolve the controversy for more than 50 years, Guyana then moved to the ICJ more than 5 years ago. The chairman of the Alliance for Change, AFC, Raphael Trotman, is bemoaning the sidelining of the opposition coalition from the oil and gas sector. He says that the coalition of a Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change, APNU-AFC, is not being briefed by the international oil companies. Touching on the recently held International Energy Conference in Expo, he said the opposition was never invited. Mr. Trotman recalled that while in opposition, the coalition government had made every effort to involve Mr. Robert Persson and Mr. Charles Ramsden of the People's Progressive Party. The AFC chairman recalled that international companies had been asked to brief the then opposition PPP about the status of the oil sector. But now, Mr. Trotman says the APNU-AFC has to resort to table motions at the National Assembly to get answers about the industry. He says that disappointingly, the international oil companies and local embassies are complicit in the tearing of the social fabric even more by giving their silent consent and encouraging this insidious practice of exclusion. Guyana's active COVID-19 cases are at an all-time low. It is now 233. Of that number, 26 are in hospital and 211 have been told to isolate themselves at home to reduce the chances of spreading the virus. The Health Ministry says 4 persons are very sick and are receiving intensive care. Laboratories have recorded 14 new cases within the past 24 hours. The death toll is 1,223. Police say that 3 persons were killed and several others were injured because a driver lost control of his speeding vehicle while racing with another and ran off the road. Investigators say that 18-year-old Matthew Ambedkar has since been arrested and is hospitalized under police guard. He is accused of driving his car at a fast rate of speed and slamming it into a parked vehicle under the Willem Public Road, then into Sharmila Harikissoon Sports Bar. Those killed are 23-year-old pedestrian Carlito Kissoon Gobenlal, 46-year-old Karen Ramprasad, and 44-year-old Ayub Mohammed. Injured are electrician Edo Wazim Mohammed of the Kentrin West Coast of Marara and 33-year-old Chandrika Virasamy. Police say that no trace of alcohol was found in the breath of the speeding driver. Turning to news now from the Caribbean. In Trinidad, the contractor involved in a Paria diving incident 2 weeks ago is breaking its silence on a tragedy that claimed the lives of 4 divers. Details from CNC3 News.
11 days after tragedy struck during maintenance work on this berth, the company whose 4 divers lost their lives is speaking out. LMCS Limited, through its attorney Gerald Ramdeen, says it was willing and able to rescue Yusuf Henry, Rishi Nagasa, Faisal Kurban and Kazim Ali Jr. on the same day the incident occurred. Ali Jr. is the only son of LMCS Managing Director Kazim Ali.
We not only had the manpower and the personnel to carry out the rescue, but we provided Paria with the methodology to execute the rescue. At all material times, we were prevented from executing this rescue by Paria and the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard. We were not given the chance to save the lives of our employees.
LMCS says since the incident occurred, it has been providing support to the grieving families, including paying for the funerals of Kurban, Nagasa and Henry. Ramdeen says the company is footing the bill for a private pathologist to do autopsies on all of the men and international experts to determine the cause of the incident. He says they are now gathering evidence for this investigation.
Those who are responsible for this tragedy that led to the death of our employees and the serious injuries to Mr. Budram must be held accountable for their actions or lack thereof. The public interest requires no less. The families who lost their loved ones deserve no less. And LMCS will be satisfied with no less.
LMCS says in the interest and honor of the lives lost, steps must be taken to prevent similar incidents from taking place. It says those responsible for the deaths of the men must be held accountable for their actions and inactions. Since the incident, the government has appointed an independent committee to investigate and make its findings available within 45 days. But in response this afternoon, Paria is denying liability for the death of the divers. The company says since June 2021, LMCS has been maintaining the pipeline. It explains that the pipeline is not connected to Paria's facilities, and therefore the company could not have contributed to a change in the conditions inside of the pipeline. Paria says after the incident, Michael Kurban, the son of Faisal Kurban, entered the pipeline several times trying to locate the missing divers. But after rescuing Christopher Budram, he was only able to retrieve some diving equipment. The company says it stopped Kurban from entering again as it was deemed too dangerous at that point. The company says the continued misinformation that is being touted needs to be stopped as it is causing more trauma to the divers' families. It also denied that it was uncooperative during the rescue efforts. Charlene Rampasad, CNC3 News.
The Barbados-based Caribbean Drought and Precipitation Monitoring Network, CDPMN, is warning that with many parts of the Caribbean, particularly in the east, experiencing below normal rainfall in January 2022, concerns over drought continue. In its latest Caribbean Drought edition, the CDPMN said significant concerns over short-term drought that can impact soil moisture availability, streams, and small rivers by the end of May 2022 exists in the United States Virgin Islands and St. Martin. The organization says significant concerns exist over long-term drought that can impact large rivers and reservoirs and the groundwater by the end of May 2022 in most of the eastern Caribbean islands, Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao, and portions of Belize. The CDPMN said that apart from those countries with significant concerns over drought, interests in southern Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, western Cuba, and northern Bahamas should continue to monitor their water resources. The CDPMN said that conditions throughout the eastern Caribbean were predominantly normal to below normal during the month of January. It said Trinidad and Tobago ranged from moderately dry to normal, Tobago and St. Vincent slightly dry, Grenada, St. Croix, and St. Thomas normal, with Barbados moderately dry, while St. Lucia was predominantly slightly dry, ranging to moderately dry in the north. The Bahamas government says it will be very difficult to convict married persons of rape. Minister of National Security Wade Munro does not believe that jurors will convict married persons accused of marital rape. Details from Our News Bahamas.
Munro originally made the comments while addressing the men's branch of the PLP on Sunday. While speaking to reporters outside a community center walkabout on Monday, he suggested that married jurors would be reluctant to convict other married people for raping their spouses.
If you choose to call it rape and you sit a jury of 9 people and you have persons who themselves are married, and a lawyer like me would suggest that if this happened to you, would you be considered a rapist? To married people on the jury.
The wording of Section 3 of the Bahamas' Sexual Offenses and Domestic Violence Act of 1991 precludes persons under the age of 14 and spouses from being guilty of rape. Munro was asked whether he thought the wording should be changed to take away that protection.
It shouldn't matter what Wayne Munro thinks, because I'm not the only person in the country. You need to canvass it broadly. Personally, I don't believe in having intercourse with anybody without their consent. I don't see that it's necessary. Rape is an offense of violence. And so my personal views about it should be engaged when we say, how are we going to change this institution called marriage in the Bahamas?
At the PLP meeting, several crowd members expressed opposition to criminalizing marital rape. At one point, one audience member disagreed, saying he viewed rape as rape, whether married or not. Munro also suggested that government may want to seek the will of the people on the issue. He also noted that the country has committed to criminalizing marital rape on previous occasions. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jared Higgs.
And that's the news to the moment. From the region, And locally, we now go to the BBC World Service for the latest bulletin of international news.
BBC News with Sue Montgomery. The United States, Britain and the European Union have announced plans to target Russia's energy sector in retaliation for the invasion of Ukraine. Washington has banned all imports of Russian oil and gas, a move described by President Biden as a powerful blow to Vladimir Putin. The UK says it will phase out oil imports from Moscow by the end of the year, while the EU said it would cut its use of Russian gas by 2/3 over the same period. The bloc gets about 40% of its gas from Russia. From Brussels, here's Jessica Parker.
EU politicians really felt they had to go down this road. There's a lot of pressure on them to act because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, because there was concern that basically they were paying Russia huge sums of money, some of which was ending up in the Kremlin's coffers, financing the war in Ukraine. And as well, a diplomat I was speaking to yesterday basically was saying that now the EU has come forward with this unprecedented raft of sanctions along with other Western allies. There's a fear that, of course, Russia is no longer a reliable supplier of gas, of oil as well.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has given an unprecedented address by video link to the British Parliament from his office in Kiev, even as Russian forces remained poised to assault the city. MPs who had packed the House of Commons gave him a standing ovation. Efforts to evacuate civilians from the besieged southern Ukrainian port of Mariupol have failed for a fourth day. Ukraine has accused Russian forces of failing to observe a ceasefire. International organisations say the city, which has a population of 400,000, faces a humanitarian catastrophe. Food is running out and there's no power or running water as shelling continues. The city's deputy mayor, Sergei Orlov, spoke of his frustration.
It's crazy situation when Russian confirmed that we have a ceasefire, but they move the troops to fight with Ukrainian troops or to shell this safety route. We have shelling directly to the route from Zaporizhia to Mariupol.
The Pentagon says it believes that between 2,000 and 4,000 Russian soldiers have been killed so far in the fighting in Ukraine. The head of the US Defense Intelligence Agency, Scott Berrier, was addressing a congressional hearing. Gordon Carrera reports.
Russia had a bad plan, Scott Berrier said. The intention had been to capture Kyiv in 2 days, but after 2 weeks, the capital has still not been encircled. And among the Russian casualties are senior officers, including the Ukrainians claimed today Major General Vitaly Gerasimov killed near Kharkiv.
BBC News. McDonald's has announced it's temporarily closing its restaurants in Russia. The fast food chain said it could not ignore what it called needless human suffering in Ukraine. McDonald's had come under increasing pressure to stop operations in Russia. It runs about 850 restaurants across the country. The BBC has resumed its English language reporting from Russia after temporarily suspending the work of its news journalists and support staff in the country. The BBC said it had considered the implications of new laws that would make it a criminal offence to spread fake news about the Kremlin's war in Ukraine. The BBC said it had decided that the Russian element was a crucial part of the Ukraine story, which needed to be told independently and impartially. A jury in the United States has found a man guilty of all charges in the first criminal trial relating to last year's storming of Congress. Guy Reffitt from Texas was convicted of crimes, including taking a gun to Washington, interfering with police, and threatening his teenage children if they reported him to the authorities. From Washington, Tara McKelvey reports.
Guy Reffitt was the first to be tried among the hundreds of men and women who have been charged in the riot at the U.S. Capitol. His trial contained a dramatic personal story. His son, Jackson, who is 19, testified against him in the courtroom. Jackson spoke of the way that his father threatened him and told him not to tell the authorities, but Jackson did anyway. The jury took less than 4 hours to deliberate, and Guy Reffitt now faces years in prison.
Security forces in the Sudanese capital Khartoum have fired tear gas to disperse protesters marching against military rule on International Women's Day. Women's rights groups had called the protest, along with neighbourhood resistance committees that have been organising demonstrations since the military took power in October. BBC News.
That's the news to the moment.
After a hard day's work, delicious comfort food is all we crave for. There at KFC, they've got you covered with a wide choice of delicious, finger-licking good meals from any of their 9 locations, including the Amazonia Mall at Providence. And there are 6 drive-through locations for your convenience. Their 11 herbs and spices are sure to blow those post-work vibes away every time. It's the perfect way to end a hard day. KFC.
It's finger-licking good.
Now to end the news, a recap of the highlights. The People's National Congress Reform has begun searching for a replacement for Mr. Joseph Harmon, who is expected to resign from Parliament later this month. A driver has been arrested and is under police guard at a hospital in connection with Monday night's deadly accident on the west coast of Marara. Regionally, a Trinidad and Tobago oil sector company says the lives of 4 divers could have been saved. And Caribbean experts believe that several countries may experience drought. The news came to you with the compliments of Kentucky Fried Chicken KFC.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.